Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
You are in the right place for conversations about current needs that we as business leaders face regarding technology, changing customer expectations, and quickly changing markets. This program is about what it means to reach short-term goals and increase confidence in our long-term positioning. This is program 193, Resolving Our Biggest Misses. This is something of a self-reflection as leaders because this is a big part of leading effectively, not only growing ourselves, leading by example to grow our teams, as well as leading by example to grow our businesses as well. Joining us today is Kristi Sullivan, owner of Sullivan Financial Planning, providing guidance on financial questions for individuals, households, and employees. Also joining us today is Dr. Ruby Lathon, a certified holistic nutritionist, a wellness coach, and an advocate for the life-saving benefits of plant-based nutrition. As we jump into this today, I'm just going to start with a Jessism, which is, I love this, and this is already going to be my favorite show. And here's how I can tell you that. One, we have two women who are willing to come on and be vulnerable with us and be as vulnerable as I am with you in every single show. This is something that I'm excited about. Here's the other thing that I know. The more vulnerable we are, the more we will take in, and the more we are able to grow. And so as I ask this question, all right, Dr. Ruby, what is your biggest miss and how did you resolve it?
Right, that's a good question. So I think for me, I do a number of things in my job, from coaching people to doing workshops on nutrition and wellness and a various number of things that fall under that umbrella. And so when I got the question, I was thinking about what that might be. And I think one of them was I got an inquiry about doing a workshop series from a really large internet provider. So, there are only a few of those around. And so they wanted a quote on what that would be. And so I gave the quote without really doing a whole lot of, first I didn't really look and see, they didn't say who they were. I didn't really look and see who it was from. I just, kind of gave my quick quote. And then I went and looked at it and I was like, oh, that was a really big, organization. I should have paid attention to that email address. And when I got the woman on the phone, she said, she was asking me about, the rates and things, and was a little surprised. And the issue was that I quoted way too low. And I knew that my prices were probably lower than they should be. And this was a little earlier on where I really wasn't confident about charging what my services are worth. So I know a lot of women do that in business. We kind of, want to give away a lot because we're just used to being givers, and we're not sometimes as ready to say, this is the price, this is what it's worth, and that's it. And I had to learn that lesson because when I was on the phone with her and I give her the price, she said, per person or per class? And I was like, oh, I just blew this because the price was way so low. And I was like, this is the last time I'm undervaluing my work and my worth. And it's what the miss was. I knew that I missed it because it was too low. And they probably thought, well, you're not really qualified to do what we're doing because, anyone who's really worth their salt is going to be charging a lot more than that. So there is a downside to underbidding yourself and devaluing your work. And so I really took that lesson and realized, that I need to adjust my prices accordingly and walk into that and feel confident about it and know that this is what it truly is worth. and go forward with that, and never kind of feel hesitant about quoting properly, and so that I won't have that. So it's like, sometimes we're trying to be all things to all people. I don't want to shut someone out, so I'm going to keep this really low so I can serve this community or that. But at the end of the day, we're business people and we have to make a living, and we should price accordingly. And you can always do a discount if you want, which I learned. So I was like, you can always accommodate another group who maybe cannot afford this price, but you need to say this is what it is. And then if they need to work with that, then we can see what we can do. That way they know this is the value of what I'm giving. And even if I charge you less, that I have made an accommodation, but this is my price. So that was the big miss, because I know that I underquoted terribly. And I said, I'll never do that again.
All right, Kristi, what's one of your biggest misses and how did you resolve it?
Okay, this is really vulnerable. I'm going to tell you a story that took me years to be able to tell my closest friends and family. And that is when I first started in business for myself. So I charge a little different than most financial advisors. I charge by the hour or by the project. And similar to Dr. Ruby, I used to have a real problem quoting my price and getting my price. And it's a thing I hear from my women colleagues all the time. So you go, girl, totally down with you on your story. So what I was told by a lawyer friend of mine who was also new in her business, she said, you should really take credit cards. People are more willing to pay your fee if they don't have to write a check. It's easier just to whip out that credit card and pay for things. I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I sort of socialized that idea, and I got the name of a person. This is before Square and all that stuff. So the way you took credit cards is you had to contract with somebody to get a machine. And you paid like a lease or a loan to get this credit card machine. So I was referred to this man by an acquaintance who knew him in a networking group, and turns out he was a fraudster. And so he told me, like, this is the price for the machine. It wasn't that, now that I look back, when we say it's my biggest mistake, it was like $60 a month. But to me, that was a ton of money at the time. A fixed cost for something that I really didn't know if I would use or not. And the arrangement was for this 5-year lease on this credit card machine at $60 a month. And I said to the guy at the time, I said, I don't know that I'll even use this. I don't really want to sign up for a 5-year commitment. He said, I'll tell you what, try it for 6 months. And if you don't like it or you don't use it, you can turn it back into me. I always have new customers who can use these things. I can reassign the lease. And I said, well, can I get that in writing? So he wrote it down and signed it, and we went on our merry way, and I gave this guy all this information of mine. I mean, he had a copy of my driver's license, he had my social security number, all sorts of stuff, right? So 3 months later, I've not used this credit card machine once. I haven't even taken it out of the box. No one has taken me up on my offer to take credit cards for my fees. And I'm like, I'm gonna call this guy up and tell him I wanna turn this machine back in. I want him to honor our agreement. Well, he is nowhere to be found. So the office that I visited him, gone, shut down. Voicemail box full. Email bouncing back. Cannot find the guy. So I called the woman who recommended him to me, and I said, where is he? And she was like, ooh, lots of people are looking for him. And in the meantime, I call this company that I'm paying the $60 a month to, and I say, look, I want out of this contract. The guy that sold it to me said I could get out in 6 months. They're like, oh no, you signed this for 5 years, you will pay this for 5 years, and if you don't, we will turn you over to collections and we will ruin your credit. So I'm a rule follower, I'm a financial gal. I mean, those threats like struck me to my very core. I was terrified. My husband was super irritated with me, but let me just say, the reason this was the biggest mistake that I made is because I didn't listen to my gut. So this guy that's selling me the credit card machine, I had my reservations. He was this really big, imposing man with this loud personality. And a couple of times I tried to say no. And what finally did it is he said to me, he goaded me into it, and I let myself fall for this. He says to me, what, do you need to ask your husband's permission? And I was like, give me that paper. I'm going to sign it right now. I don't have to ask my husband's permission. I'm a grown woman. I have my own business. He totally pressed that button on me, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, that's what completely put me over the edge. And I just look back on that, and I just think we all have a gut instinct that we need to follow. And my gut instinct said, this guy is no good. This product is not good for me. This caused me so much stress. And so then, ultimately I had to freeze my credit. I just unfroze my credit after 10 years. Because that guy, I mean, he could have done anything with that information to steal my identity. And in the end, how did I resolve it? And this is the learning lesson that I came away from it. I mean, if anything could be positive, was that 13 other people from the leads group that had been referred to this man were also in a similar situation to mine. And so I will take credit, I really kind of gathered these people together. We filed a great big huge joint complaint with the Attorney General's office. You go through the Better Business Bureau to start the process, but there were 13 of us who had a file that all had a complaint, and I put it all together and we delivered it as one. It's 13 complaints, but we delivered it as one to get their attention. So ultimately what happened was I just quit paying the bill. They did turn me over to collections. The Attorney General's office opened a file on our complaint. They were not able to resolve it. In other words, I didn't get my money back. But what the guy at the Attorney General's office told me is he said, here's the number of your file with us. If anyone calls you and harasses you about this, tell them you have a file open with the Attorney General's office investigating their business practices, and here's the number. And sure enough, funny enough, the contract, I know I'm going over my 2 minutes, but I don't know how to make this short. The contract was with a firm out of Louisiana, this super sleazy firm. The collections agency was in Denver. So there's a guy in Denver that called me and said, here's the situation. I said, I was frauded into this contract. 13 other people and I have filed a complaint with the Attorney General. Here's the file number. And the guy, who's real nice, he's like, I'll call you back. So he called me back about a week later. He's like, we're not going to pursue this. In other words, they don't want to do business with someone who probably has a criminal record or, is a fraud. So the whole thing got dropped. My credit did not get ruined. Neither did anybody else's. But it was a very stressful time. And I was so embarrassed, especially being a financial advisor myself. I think anyone who gets involved in a fraud, especially that they willingly participated in some way, it is just such a humiliating experience. But like I said, it was probably 3 years before I even told my sister that it happened. I was so depressed about it for a while. I felt like such a failure.
And in both cases, there's a big blow to our confidence.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily for a lack of asking questions or asking for what we want. It's whatever the outcome was, this miss, it was a blow to us personally, as much as it was a blow in some capacity to our business or our own personal perception of what was going on in our business. And that leads me to the first follow-up section that I'd like to explore with you. And that is about confidence. How do you work on your confidence every day?
So am I starting?
Sure. This is kind of free form at this point.
Free form. Okay,
yeah.
Sure. I think for me, with confidence, meditation helps actually, because it helps me get centered and focused for the day. And it just gives me that sense of calm and powerfulness and all of that I need to get going. Whenever I just get going and haven't had that time and just jump out of bed and in a rush, doesn't go so well. But when I have that time to relax and get centered and realize, I have the power of the universe and good energy behind me, then I feel a lot more confident. I'm not alone in this, and then I can, walk into any room and feel good about it. So that really helps for me is really taking that personal time with myself to get settled and centered, and then everything else tends to fall into place, including the confidence.
Whew. Okay, New Year's resolution 1, meditate.
Yes.
And I know it's hard. I've tried before. It's hard. It's hard. It's like a muscle that you have to develop. And I've
definitely.
I've not tried hard enough to do it. And all the successful people, they all meditate. And so that would be a really good thing for me to try. I don't know that I have a really good answer to that. I think I probably rely too much on external feedback for my confidence. And so probably one thing I do to my detriment is I do a ton of stuff. I'm on a lot of boards. I do a lot of volunteering. I have my business, and, you know, hearing accolades, that helps me with my confidence, but that's not really very genuine. You know, you should start it from a place more internally than I do. So definitely an area of improvement.
It's interesting that you say that, because one answer very internal, one answer very external, meaning I find from within or I find from without. And I happen to be, Kristi, a little more like you is, and external validation has become almost like like sugar, something that you crave in the afternoon if you haven't eaten a balanced enough lunch, if you will, right?
Right.
You want trash, you want a little bit of sugar. And I look at external validation that way, and I still require it. I require going outside to get energy to bring in, even when I meditate. I don't meditate every day, but I do meditate on a regular basis. And when I get that external and I bring it in, I can still find some sort of groundedness that doesn't take away from my need to get anything or get my energy, because my energy does not come from here first. And what allowed me to own that was actually meditating. So isn't that an interesting concept? What you learn about yourself when you're willing to actually just be with yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a good mix of both, because I think sometimes I used to rely mostly on the external, definitely. But then when it's not there, then you're like, you know, you're constantly chasing more of it. But I think we all need that positive feedback continuously in our lives. So I think it's a balance too of getting both. And if that's what charges you up, then that's great. So for me, it's like, I prefer to get it internally and then let it be reinforced with the positive feedback that I do get, because then you can always adjust and do things differently with that feedback too. And then also when you get the negative feedback, you don't get crushed. So when you say that,
I was just going to say that I think that, you know, and by the way, follow-up question, do I get to ask follow-up questions, Jess?
Yes.
Follow-up question would be, would you advise the beginner meditator to start and not quit? But I would say that for me too, if I get negative feedback, I think it affects me way more than it should. And that's because I'm not starting in a good place.
That used to, for me too, I mean, I could have I know I had a job review, you know, your yearly review, and I almost cried because I didn't get all positive feedback, because I'm such an overachiever. I was like, I cannot believe I'm a grown woman about to cry because I didn't get 100%, you know, but that's because I was so used to the external and it always being all good that when it wasn't, it was like, wait, you know, I've been doing A+ stuff forever. So that's why I realized I couldn't chase that always. But to your question of meditating, what helped me was starting with guided meditations where someone is talking you through it. So I use an app on my phone that helps, so I don't have to go, you know, find some YouTube or something like that you can start with short. And people think you might need, you know, an hour. Really 20 minutes is about the sweet spot for it, 15 to 20. And then just, you know, doing a guided meditation, so you just get used to breathing and relaxing. And then you can move on to just having some ambient noise in the background and that kind of thing, and knowing that you don't have to focus on having a blank slate, because that's not possible. You just focus on something like the air conditioning motor or breathing. And that is just to stop thinking about a bunch of stuff and focus on that one little, you know, non-serious thing like a noise, and that helps you bring the calm, and then the rest of the benefit just comes from there. But it's really just making the time for it, and you know, using some good things like an app or what you're going to do to get it started. But that's what really helped me.
I'll be curious to hear what one of the biggest benefits for you is in addition to the groundedness. For me, one of the biggest benefits of meditation is that being consistent about it, and I used to do it every day. I'm in a stage of my life where as much as I'd like to prioritize that, there are a few other things that have equal priority, like eating well, sleeping, and exercise. And so I was like, if I can only do 3 of the 4 things, I guess meditation is not happening every day. And exercise won't happen every day. So let's see how that plays together. So one of the outputs though of that, right, after I have prioritized that is that if something is automatically crazy, off the wall, left field, whacking the head with a 2x4, falling down and spraining your ankle, which I did last night, and whatever that is, I can actually breathe for like 7 breaths, and I can find what I get in 20 minutes of meditation every day. And it's only because my body has been trained and I have spent the time to allow myself to be with my body that I can bring in a sense of other. I'm not always going to say calm because I don't know if that's possible, but a sense of other, something different than what I've got right here in front of me. And so in the moment, it allows me to navigate different situations that are unexpected and surprisingly so.
I think that's great. Yeah, I could definitely see that because you're just drawing on what you've already kind of banked up. Absolutely, definitely does work that way. It helps you to reset, yourself. Like when things are going a little crazy, like, okay, literally let's take a few deep breaths because it does make a difference. And just kind of realize, okay, I'm a little off track here. I'm off centered. When all these things are starting to just, go down in a bad way, you say, okay, I'm off centered. Let me take a deep breath and recalibrate. So it does kind of give you that ability to recalibrate and not just keep it going like, oh, I'm just having a terrible day. You actually get to control it and say, okay, let's change course. Even little things like I'm making my green smoothie and then I knock it over into the sink and I'm like, gosh, okay, we're not starting off on a good note. I was like, well, at least it was in the sink. I was like, what's the good part about it? At least I don't have to clean it. And it's only half of it, So I'm like, I'm just going to take the positive and then take a deep breath and recalibrate so that we don't keep going on this path. So that's what it's helped me to do, to know that I can take charge at any moment. And you can take a 5-minute break. That's like a meditation if you want, and just stop the energy that's going in the wrong direction and, refocus it.
Yeah, no need to wait till tomorrow.
No, absolutely not.
I was actually just going to ask that because for me, and I bet I share this with a lot of insomniacs, and I'm not an insomniac, but when my self-doubts are the most stringent is when I'm trying to go to bed. Like when I'm falling asleep, that's when all the things that I could have done better as a parent or a coworker or a friend, or just the things that didn't get checked off my list today, that's when it comes just slamming in. So I think maybe I need it more at night than in the morning.
Yeah, at night is a good time. I mean, because you kind of set yourself up for a good night's sleep and it carries over, so nighttime meditation is great. It can be anytime. They say night and morning is the best time. So whichever, yeah, especially if your mind needs to settle down at night. It's a great thing to do that. Yeah.
So sometimes that negative feedback is ours. And that was going to be the next point that we dig into, right? The what is going on in our monkey minds, or keeping us, sometimes it's up at night, or waking us up early, or preventing us from sleeping, or getting in the way of us actually being present in what we're doing as we're building business, as we're mentoring our teams, things like that. And it comes to that concept of that negative feedback. Maybe it's giving and receiving. And so my question to you is around negative feedback, do you notice that you're your own biggest critic, or do you take it harder when somebody else does this? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I know for me, the more I failed at something, the better I got at adapting to it as it happened, especially when it was out of my control. And I'm going to go way back in the day, several years, to when Scott and I had the Jess plus Scott show. And we would do this thing. And even today, my internet is not great, but my internet was horrible in the last place that I lived up in the Pacific Northwest. And there was no way to make it faster. We explored all kinds of things short of digging up the driveway and digging a trench about 1/4 of a mile long. we weren't going to fix the problem. And so the problem was going to remain the problem. And I got in my own way. Every time I had a technical problem on air, every time things didn't go well, you would see once I was back in, you're dealing with this and I could barely talk, and I was so intense and I was overcompensating for something that I had no control over. Did it affect the show? Yeah. Did Scott work his magic and make it amazing? Yeah. Did we let the guests know what was happening and what might happen? Yeah. And after a while, I was like, oh, look at that. So now it only took years. But when technical problems happen, we kind of know what to do. And I know how not to react because I know there's nothing I can do. So me being gone and pop back in, no problem. Me having to own it all, no problem. I can't. We've built our systems, which, by the way, silly me, I could have done this earlier. It took me a while to learn it, was to build in these systems a little earlier to have this place, a net that would catch us, that doesn't fix the problem, but it minimizes it so that the experience of the program continues with minimal interruption. So now it doesn't bother me at all. I know other people get really freaked out when their technology doesn't work. I'm like, I totally get it. I've been there. I got out of my own way, but it came only through dealing with it over and over and over again.
I would agree. I would say in my business, what I do is, I'm giving people financial advice that is very closely intertwined with life advice. And so, people don't come to a financial advisor because they are dying to buy an insurance product, which I don't sell. But they're coming because they have fears or worries or aspirational goals that they'd like to meet, and they don't know how to get there. And so in my line of work, it's this very close together relationship between therapy and numbers. And I probably shouldn't say this on this show, but I'm not a real numbers person. So I was always terrible at math. I remember crying while I would work on my math homework. It's not my thing. And I hated my finance classes in college. But as I got out into the world, I realized, personal finance, it can be about the personal. And yeah, the finance is important, but there's software to help you with that. So where I was going with this is that a lot of times I'm sitting there talking to people in an appointment and we're talking about their lives, and I'm entering numbers at the same time in my software, trying to give them some sort of data with which to make decisions. And, sometimes the data gets entered wrong, or a box doesn't get checked in the software, and I pull up this stuff and it's like, oh, and as I'm presenting it to the client, I realize, mistake. And a mistake in my business can cause people to make the wrong decision, but I've learned through hard experience that if I get flustered and sweat and stress out and apologize profusely, that just makes the client nervous. If I just quickly own it, like, forgot to start your Social Security at age 65, let me just fix that real quick, and if I just own it and tell people, hey, this is the danger of doing this right in front of you, instead of you paying me for pre-work. Again, Dr. Ribby, charging for my time appropriately.
Right.
It relaxes them, and they know that financial planning is necessarily just a moving target anyway. Even if I entered everything perfectly, the minute they walk out the door, all the data changes anyway. So it's just a matter of realizing that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes for a client sometimes. Own it, move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm similar about not letting things really freak you out. So I do a lot of cooking demonstrations, demos, all kinds of things that involve food. And usually, there's a lot of planning, especially when I do my cooking show. There's a lot of pre-work to do a 5-minute video on cooking. And there's a lot of pre-work when you show up somewhere to do a demo. So it's like, if you leave something out, you're down to the spoons. What are you going to mix this in? What bowl are you going to put this in? If you leave the knife, what are you going to cut stuff with? So it's a lot of these places don't have like kitchens. You're like, remote location. So I've learned to improvise like crazy. And just relax. Because when I started, I was working with another chef who's a partner of mine, and I would totally freak out when we would be putting stuff out and we forgot something. And it's like, just calm down. That's not helping, you know? You improvise just like you do in the kitchen when you don't have something. You don't just say, oh God, the meal's off, you know? You improvise. And so I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm really good at improvising. And so now nothing rattles me with that. It was before I'd be so concerned about, you know, whatever it is that I forgot or missed or whatever, that, you know, it would kind of throw off the whole energy of it. So now it's like I've left whole ingredients that I needed and no one missed a beat, you know. So it's like, I'm okay. I don't freak out anymore. I'm like, if there's someone who can run to the store, we do that. If not, we'll make the magic work regardless. So yeah, I've been able to, we did, I think, kale chips without the kale once.
What? Is it just like olive oil?
They were cheesy kale chips with like a cashew cheese. So we focused on that. And I had the finished product. So I was like, okay, so this is where we would put it on the kale, the sauce.
That's amazing.
There was no store within any mileage of when this needed to happen. And I was like, okay, I have all the ingredients except the kale. But fortunately, we have the finished product and people can taste that and see what it looks like. So it's like, okay, then you would spread it on the sheet and voila, you know. But before, I would have totally freaked out, like, OMG, what am I going to do? But I'm like, just roll with it. It'll be fine, you know. And it was, and nobody, because I didn't freak out about it and acted like it was just part of the show. It didn't even. No one said, "Well, where's the kale?" You know. It went through very smoothly. So I've learned to relax and know that your energy about what you're doing matters really most, and that sets the tone for everything. So I've gotten out of my own way with that, and no more freaking out and, you know, blood pressure going way up and like, we're going to do this, that, and the other. Just relax. And not that I don't fix things. You know, I've sent people home to get stuff, the blender. You know, you got the blender motor, but not the blender top. I'm like, okay, somebody's got to go and get this. But I was relaxed about it, you know, just take a little more time and make it happen. So I just learned to relax and let it flow instead of just getting all bent out of shape and throwing the whole thing off. It's going to work out.
You're listening to The Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
You are listening to program 193, Resolving Our Biggest Misses. And boy, are we just putting it all on the table for you today. Kristi Sullivan, Dr. Ruby Lathon, we are looking at what it means and how we deal with and the way that we show up. And so far, what has come up for me really revolves around this concept of we're not going to be confident all of the time, so what do we do about it? When things go wrong and we're not expecting them, what can we do about it? And the common denominator in both of those scenarios is show up. And when we show up and are actually there and present, everything tends to find its way through with minimum amount of bumps possible. So what I'm taking away is the sooner we own it, the sooner we can work with it, and the sooner we can integrate it to still get to the outcome that we want, even if it's not in the same time, even if it's not in the same general vicinity of what we thought the outcome would be, because we're still going to get to the outcome, even though it happens to be from a complete other place. So with that in mind, when we're thinking about all of this, part of being able to show up is just remaining open and curious. What are some ways that you foster your curiosity, both at work and out of work? So in life in general.
I like to know stuff and everything. So I think that hasn't been an issue for me because I just love to know. I was kind of kid who always carried around a dictionary in my purse in high school because I like to know. This is before smartphones, obviously. I needed to know. I wanted to know what every word I heard meant. So I'm going to look it up, literally. So that's so that part, like in my personal life, is really easy. But for the job, it's because I like to be an expert. So I don't like to be wrong. So it makes me study a lot more. And when you love what you do, you just want to be better at it. And that's why, I switched careers from engineering to holistic nutrition, is because I didn't love engineering like that I was going to study on my own or pick up a book on the weekend and read about industrial engineering. I just wasn't going to do it. It was like my job, but I'm not doing that on the weekend. And I realized my coworkers, because I worked at a really high functioning lab, they did that kind of thing on the weekend and talked about it and were doing things in their field, like building stuff. And I'm like, I'm never going to be as good as them because they're putting in more time than me. So I probably should look into something else, and I was like, I want to be an expert at what I do. So it's like when you love what you do, you naturally want to be better at it. And then it's a joy to research things and just know. And so I think the key there is making sure you like what you do and then having that desire to be really, really good at it. And then you naturally just keep being curious. I hear about things, I see things online, I hear about the fads, and so I always want to know so I have an answer.
I guess for me, I am very curious about people too. And I'm with you, Dr. Ruby. I don't want it to be seen as gossipy or nosy, but I love hearing about your family drama. I love a good People magazine. I love that stuff. So it's great for what I do because, like I said, I'm not so focused on selling products or beating the market or anything like that. Like, I want to hear about your family. I want to hear about your mess and let's talk about how we can work with your money to maybe help alleviate some of these stresses and some of these messes. But I think that's what makes me different as a financial advisor, because so many people in my business are about the numbers and the investments and the beating the market and this, that, and the other. And I'm kind of like, yeah, the market's going to do what it's going to do. Tell me about your son in rehab or whatever, and that sounds probably really creepy, but like when I used to work for a very large brokerage firm and I was the only female planner in the office, I always, like, if anyone called the office and said, I need to meet with an advisor because my husband just died, guess who always got those appointments? It was always me, because none of the men in the office, and I'm sorry, I'm not man bashing, but they just did not want to deal with someone crying at their desk. So that always landed on my desk, and it was okay. I didn't mind that. So my interest in people and their stories, I think, keeps me really engaged in work. And then as far as the technical aspects of it, well, like Dr. Ruby said, you have to know what you're doing. You have to be competent first and foremost. That's what people expect out of you. So for one thing, at least in my industry, we're pretty highly regulated. I mean, you have to get so many continuing education hours, and they have to be recorded by a central body, and you have to do that. And being on my own, as opposed to working for a large company where that information used to be spoon-fed to me by a big national organization, now I have to go find it. So that's kind of nice, because I get to get educated on the things that interest me. And then sometimes I get educated on things that don't interest me, but become interesting after I learn a little bit more about it. So like, for example, like Bitcoin, which I think is the dumbest thing ever. But I have to be
Tell us how you really feel.
I have to be educated enough to make that statement, right? I can't just say that. I have to go to some classes, and I have to read and hear people's opinions. And of course, I know all about research and information bias, and I know that I tend to seek out opinions that support my own to begin with, but it's still dumb. And, but I had to go to some classes about Bitcoin to reiterate that to myself and to others.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I'm really glad you put some knowns in there with the science behind it. We always find information that support what we believe anyway. And so it takes a lot of effort to go out of our way and learn something that doesn't go with it, to either one, reinforce, or two, question what we've been questioning, so we actually do know what we're talking about. And I heard that a little bit from both of you, which leads me into this next piece. You are both in service businesses. Your clients are coming to you for something very specific. How do you anticipate what they need, or what in general your overall client group is in need of, to best serve them to grow not only them, and if they're working with a business, their business, if they're working with their family, and personally or professionally, but also to grow your business?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, kind of anticipating needs is just part of it is just experience, seeing what the common threads are and seeing where the holes are, where you could do better too. And then also, listening to feedback in a variety of ways. For me, it's, if we're talking about holistic health and nutrition, a lot of people are talking about it and expressing their concerns about it. So I'm reading those things and kind of getting the pulse of what's going on. I take surveys occasionally, see what people want to hear, but mostly it's looking at the successes and the fails, looking at both to see what worked, so I can do more of that, and what didn't work so I can fix it for the next person. So it's really just being responsive and open, and never thinking you got it down, knowing that there's always more you can do and do better, and that you can learn from other people. And so it's just a continuous, I think, learning process. You get better with experience,
I agree. I think that, and Dr. Ruby, you're coming from, it sounds like you're a small business owner, but you had a larger sort of corporate environment to begin with, and that teaches you about working with people. And for me, in my early career, I spent working for 2 large companies where I just handled a ton of clients all the time. There was not any time to even breathe. And if anybody is talking about getting into my business, I always recommend that they do that for a few years. It's like boot camp. If you are seeing or meeting with 10 people a day for 3 years, you're going to learn so much more about your business and about people and about the kinds of circumstances that come up than you ever will in some small private wealth management firm that services 20 families. What are you going to learn there? So I think that time in the trenches it's worthwhile. It's what you got to do to start your career in a lot of cases, because you need to pay the bills and you need medical benefits and you need all that good stuff. But it's absolutely valuable to my clients that I have, 20 plus years of experience dealing with just so many different ages of people, needs of people. So I would never say that there's nothing that I haven't seen. I mean, truly, every day there's something I haven't seen, but at least there's a frame of reference or an ability to go and research that little aspect of that thing that I don't know about, or certainly, again, over the years, the professional network that I've built up of other advisors where I can call up and be like, wow, I've never run across this. Have you? And somebody has. So, and I think, Dr. Ruby, I think you alluded to this too, being in to your profession, having friends that are in your profession that you can talk to, that you can learn from, that you can commiserate with. We both have unknowns. Dr. Ruby is dealing with the human body. I mean, how are you ever going to know what it's really hard to know with any kind of certainty what you recommend is going to work. For me, I'm dealing with the uncertainty of investment markets and investor behavior, which are two really, and then their lives as well. I mean, I can plan, and I do plan for people to have a long life, and then, they come up with a terrible diagnosis and the plans all change.
What makes it bold to recognize and integrate our big misses?
A lot of times we want to hide our mistakes, right? So, embracing it is part of it, but, taking that lesson from it. I mean, failure or misses or whatever you want to call it, it's part of success, really. Because you tried something, it didn't work, and you try again, and you learn from it. It's only a failure, true failure, if you just, kind of brush it under the rug and repeat it again and again. So it's for me, it's a learning process. So it's like, okay, I see what I did wrong there. It happens. Let's do better this time, and let's learn from that and make everything better because of it. So it's like not being afraid of, those failures, because they're going to happen. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make wrong choices, whether it's, health, financial, whatever it is, things happen. So it's knowing that it is, and knowing that it's okay. I'm going to take that, and it's going to be a stepping stone, and I probably won't make that mistake again, but I might make a different one, which, but I'm going to be better equipped. I'm going to be better for that. I mean, we've all had those embarrassing situations where we've gotten scammed, which I have too, or just made a mistake, and you want to beat yourself up so bad, like, how did I let this happen? But knowing that it's okay, it happens. So we move on and learn from it. So it's like knowing that it does, and not beating ourselves up about it, and using it as part of our fiber to move forward.
The bold part is always owning it, saying you were wrong to yourself first, and then trying to forgive yourself. So in the case of the miss that I couldn't talk about for 3 years, I mean, that's how long it took me to forgive myself. That was the problem, is that I held on to it as such a personal failure for so long. And when I started telling people about it, I mean, certainly if as any kind of advice giver, I think it really helps bring you closer to your clients if you admit your fails. Or, if they say, oh, I just don't know how this happened, and you say, yeah, I totally did that. I mean, it's so much better than taking advice from someone who's never made a mistake. I mean, who even wants to talk to that person? So I think that, owning your mistakes, forgiving yourself, the more I talked about my fraud situation, the better I felt, but it was really hard to take that first step. And now, as you can see, I talk about it all the time, but it was hard.
You will find the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/p193. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/p for program 193. You may also search for resolving our biggest misses. Keep this conversation going. Join in the vulnerability. Talk about the things that will help get you through recognizing forgiveness, recognizing trying again, recognizing the importance of being curious, improvisation, problem solving, all things that we started talking about today. Because what my experiences are, what Kristi's experiences are, what Dr. Ruby's experiences are, you can learn from them and take away practical aspects to try out in the things that you're facing, and keep sharing with us. Let us hear what you're up to so we may learn from you as well. Rate this program where you are watching or listening: iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, our website, whatever your preferred listening platform is. All right. It takes courage to resolve our biggest misses.
The Voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. When you aren't seeing the growth results you want, it's time to get an outside perspective. To discuss your specific situation around growth strategy, work with us. Visit voiceofboldbusiness.com and click Find Out More. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.